So I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can we proceed with, why don't we start with the Pledge of Allegiance? Jean, you have your flag?
Flag.
I pledge allegiance
To
to the flag of the United States of America
and
and
to
to
the
the republic for which it
for which
stands,
stands one
one
nation,
nation, under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, you know, I have my flags too.
All right, thank you. Okay, if we can proceed with the roll call and the places that we normally sit.
I saw
Jean Ravenel,
Suzanne D'Onofrio.
Harriet Plansky.
Paul Niebuhr,
Laurel Anderson.
Where's Maureen?
Oh, did we lose her?
I don't see her.
She got disconnected.
Huh.
She said she was doing well at this now.
No.
There are two phone call-in listeners. Is she one of them by any chance? Anybody know what's her phone number? No.
If she is a listener on the phone, she can press *9.
Harriet, can you, is she texting you?
It just told her to log back in or call.
There's a new attendee on the call. 677. I think that's new.
All right, so for her to call in, what does she have to do? Press 9?
*9.
Right, if she uses the information on the website to call in, she can press *9 when she gets here and we can bring her in.
Okay. She says I cannot. Yes, she can. So what's the number again? I don't have it in front of me. I'm calling her. Okay, you calling in? You're on the. Okay, so call, so just call. Okay, thanks. All right, she's calling in.
Okay.
Do some practices with her.
Hmm.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Maureen?
Yep.
Okay, well,
Great.
I'm on the phone.
Okay, we
It
just
won't let
need
me
you.
back in on the computer or on my iPad.
Huh.
All right. We just need you to
Okay,
state your name for the roll call
okay, I'm here.
and your name.
Maureen Bova.
Great, thank you. All right, let's see. Any revisions to the minutes of the regular June 23rd, 2020 board meeting? All right, would someone make a motion to approve?
Jean Rabineau, I'll move the approval.
A second,
Okay.
Laurel Anderson.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next order of business, election of officers.
Hold on for a
this-
minute, let me get my papers. Okay, Maureen, back on.
Okay. Election of officers. At this annual meeting, the board members will vote on a slate of officers, excluding board chairman, for the 2020-2021 as per the THA bylaws. I make a motion on the record to refer the matter to the board acting as if in committee of the whole for the purpose of nominating committee members for the 2020-2021 board slate. I would like to vote to go into committee. Will someone please make the motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, we are now in committee. So we recently had an election. So I would like to just propose the following officers for vice chairperson, Suzanne D'Onofrio. I'm going to call off each person's name, and if you can, please let me know how you vote. I'm just going to go by the order that's on my screen. Laurel Anderson,
Okay, since you've got a motion on the floor, I'll say yes. But I'd like some discussion
do you
about,
have something else to say? Go ahead.
okay. I thought we were going to discuss a bylaws change, which then would move the election of officers in line with the naming of the commissioners, which is in December.
I thought there were some emails that went around that there was a reason that we don't do it that way.
I had not seen anything like that, Paul.
No, I don't have it in
Well,
front of me.
this is Jean. Originally, there was some email that went around that way, but then everybody reconsidered. I thought that we were supposed to discuss today changing the bylaws so that the election of officers would take place in December.
All right, you are right now in the committee of the whole, which is to consider nominations. Your current bylaws have your election of officers at the annual meeting in July.
Yes,
So
and
if-
that, to my mind, is a major error, but yes.
I understand that. However, if you change that now, you're not going to have elections until December. So my recommendation would be is that you have your officers elected in July. If you choose to change the bylaws thereafter, you'll be voting in December. Now, the reason that you voted in December, I circulated an email. You'll just recall that there was a vacancy as a result of your prior chairman going off the board. So that December vote was pursuant to the section of your bylaws on how to fill a vacancy. So now you're at your annual meeting and you're electing your officers for the year. If you choose to change the bylaws, that will happen sometime. I don't think you're going to, if you did it today, all you're doing is postponing your election of officers until December. So it seems to me that you want to probably stick with your current bylaws and discuss the proposed changes going forward. I mean, I hear you, and I'm not saying you can't discuss them, but if you change the bylaws right now, all you're doing is postponing your election from July, which is currently required, until December, assuming that you got a affirmative vote to change that bylaw.
All right, Chris, this is Jean again. As I understand it, under the town rules in general, if we were to postpone the election of officers until December, those currently serving would continue to serve until replaced.
That's true. That's in 8-41, which is the state law.
Right. And as I understand it further, we cannot amend the bylaws at this meeting because it didn't make it onto the agenda.
Well,
And it's got to be noticed.
Well, I don't know if no one noticed, but the subject of changing the bylaws only came up very, very recently, and there's been no meeting for the board to discuss whether or not it wishes to do so or to propose any changes. So it would.
Which is why it should have been on this month's agenda.
Well, can I just interject for a second here? I think even if it was on this month's agenda, the outcome, and we agreed to do that, the outcome would be we postpone the elections until December and we have the same slate of people that we have right now. The alternative, since we do not have it on the agenda, is just to vote in the current officers, and at the next meeting or any meeting between now and December, we can discuss changing the bylaws so that we have another election in December, and we would just then abandon the next, a year from now, the next July elections. So it seems we end up with pretty much the same thing if we just vote the current slate of officers in, put an agenda item on for next month to change the bylaws to have elections in December rather than July.
Right, because you know that there's going to be changes on the board.
Right, yeah, I mean, I think my term is up December,
Yeah,
Okay.
all right. I suppose this is probably also the time before you start reading the names of people for the various offices to inform the board that I will not be here. This will be my last meeting as a commissioner of the Housing Authority. I am being sworn in tomorrow as Deputy Registrar of the Town of Trumbull.
oh, well.
And I am
congratulations.
informed by,
Oh, congratulations.
congratulations, Harriet.
Oh, my God, somebody will know.
Okay, so the net result, I understand from Town Attorney Dan Shopik, is that I cannot serve both positions at once.
Mhm.
I will therefore be tendering my resignation from the Housing Commission tomorrow morning to Vicky Tesoro.
Okay,
Oh,
all right,
sorry.
well, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so, unless
Gene,
there's,
excuse me, what's your current position, Gene? I apologize.
Right now, the only position I have with the Town of Trumbull is Housing Commissioner.
No,
But
I understand that.
Starting
You're not-
tomorrow, I will be one of the town's 2 deputy registrars.
I
the
hear you loud and clear. I'm asking
Secretary.
what officer you are at the Housing Authority.
Whatever was at the bottom of the ticket, I have no
Well,
idea.
I think that's
Secretary.
Assistant Treasurer?
secretary.
No, that was Laurel.
No, that's
Secretary,
Laurel.
I think. Secretary.
Okay. All right, well,
Yeah.
that's what all I was focusing on is
Yeah,
that position seems will remain vacant.
I'm afraid it will have to until Vicky appoints somebody in my place.
Congratulations, by the way. That's a great
I'm not
job.
sure whether
Yeah.
congratulations or condolences, actually,
right.
but
Be careful
No,
with your lips, Laura.
congratulations, because you know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's great.
vaguely, yeah.
I'm happy for you.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Congratulations.
So you are in the committee of the whole, and this was nominations. I hear the chair is presenting the existing slate. He's nominating the existing officers to be reinstated for another term.
Right,
Except that I would move that my name be dropped.
Understood. So if that's the nomination, then the board is agreeing to those nominations, and then you can come out of committee of the whole.
okay.
I have a vote on the floor, yes, to Suzanne D'Onofrio.
Yeah.
Okay, Jean, how do you vote?
Yes, for Suzanne.
Let's see, Suzanne, how do you vote?
Yes.
Maureen, how do you vote?
Yes.
All right, and I vote yes, it carries unanimously. For treasurer, I'd like to nominate Maureen, or I'd like to propose Maureen Bova. So let's go around the table. And I see that my screen is switched up, so I may end up going in a slightly different order. Laurel, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jean, how do you vote?
Yes.
Suzanne, how do you vote?
Yes.
Maureen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, I vote yes, so that carries unanimously. For assistant treasurer, I proposed Laurel Anderson. Laurel, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jean, how do you vote?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Okay, I vote yes, so that carries unanimously. I propose that since Jean will be leaving us as of tomorrow, we leave the secretary position open. Chris, do we need to do anything more than that?
When you come out of the committee of the whole now, you can cast one vote and adopt that slate.
Okay, so we'll be leaving the secretary open. At this time, well, let's see, so I need to make a motion to bring us out of committee of the whole. Would somebody make the motion, please?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you. We are now out of the committee as a whole. Someone please make a motion to adopt the THA slate of officers for 2020-2021. Someone please make a motion.
So
So
moved,
moved.
Laurel Anderson.
Second, Jean Rabineau.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, aye, so it carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Maureen, would you please do the treasurer's report?
Yes. Financial narrative for June 30th, 2020. From July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, the overall gain of the Housing Authority is $3,521,512, which includes all rental income, services income, and capital grant funding provided for the redevelopment, rehabilitation, and the remodeling efforts. Take out the capital grant of $3,687,811, and the Housing Authority has an operating loss before depreciation of $133,987. $83,304 is attributable to the village, and $50,683 is attributable to Stern Center. Stern Village's current month's operating loss, excluding capital grant revenue, is $28,984. This is primarily due to payout of severance and June having an extra week of payroll. Stern Center's current month's operating loss, excluding capital grant revenue, is $12,955. This is also partially due to severance payout and extra week of payroll. In addition, the higher than average turnover resulted in lost services revenue and a few bad debts due to residents passing away. The overall cash position of the Housing Authority, including reserves, is $1,145,264, which includes $507,878 reserved for renovation costs at Stern Village. Accounts payable totaled $70,537, including construction payables of $17,592. Total current assets compared to current payables, not including reserves, are as follows. For the village, the total current assets were $91,167 compared to $116,316 in current payables, or a deficit of $25,149. This deficit includes the $17,592 in construction payables and other construction payments made from operations due to nearing conclusion of the construction project. Once the SHSP project is closed out, Stern Village is slated to recoup construction payments. For the congregate, the total current assets were $59,847 compared to $82,078 in current payables, resulting in a deficit of $22,231. This deficit increased $3,174 compared to the prior month due to operating results. In addition, congregate owes $322,825 to the village, which has been the average owed during the second half of the year. And overall, the Housing Authority remains in a good financial position, with congregate sustainably being the primary focus, along with the completion of current and future improvement projects. The end.
All right, thank you, Maureen. Any questions or discussion on that? Yes, Laurel.
Hi. So one thing I'd like to ask Jason, please, in the future, If you go down to the second to the last paragraph,
Mm-hmm.
the debt owed.
Yep, 322.
I would like it to state that it's gone up $17,000, which it did. It was $305,000 last time you reported to us. It is now $322,000. I would much rather it say it went up 17,000 rather than I have to look back at the last minutes
Oh, okay.
to see what was reported. And it's, you know, kind of immaterial, I think, to our overall view of the debt and where it's going to know that it's an average. That's kind of not helpful. I'd really like to see what the trend is. The trend for me is 305 the last time you reported and 322 you know, as of the end of June. So
Noted.
that's not a good, good
Nope.
trend.
Nope.
Jason speaking, and part of what I, just to respond a little bit, part of what we had discussed is establishing a baseline. And I think this number, while higher, is, I think, the most relevant baseline to establish and evaluate going forwards. Right, so we're starting at the 322. I would propose when we have a snapshot of it, is that I'll put it in table format for you guys to see, and we'll always compare it to the 322 until next year. So you could always see, you know, where are you? And I think that'll provide, same thing with, you know, other metrics. So we could kind of, does that make sense?
I understand your point and I'm all in favor of that, but I would seriously like to see on a month-to-month basis.
Okay.
If it went down 17,000, yay, I want to see that. And frankly, I'd like to know why. What did we do right?
Right.
What's going right?
Yeah.
When it goes up $17,000 in 1 month, I'd conversely like to know what are we doing that caused that to happen.
I could tell you what that is. It's on June 30th, you had the payout. That June 30th was a large payroll that Congress didn't pay for, in essence.
Right. So, okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So, are you pretty close to being done with the year-end numbers at this point, or are you still going to have? There's still some things coming in, or?
No, those are 95% the numbers.
Okay. So
that's why you'll see a little bit of swings. Things like you may have seen if you notice a couple of negative expenses because we're adjusting pilot payments for year end, we're adjusting bad debts for year end, payroll accruals, accrued compensation, everything's been adjusted already and reflected in.
Well, I also noticed that the taxes were markedly higher over 2019. Did that have to do with payment? You know, like, I mean, I assume we're on accrual basis, so that shouldn't affect, you know, when it was paid shouldn't affect, but that was a pretty big jump.
Oh, the accrued taxes that are to be paid?
Yeah.
That is because you are still, now you're actually now 2 years out on your pilot. We usually pay out that pilot around December of every year. It's an annual payment, but we wait for the audit to be released. The audit is still technically pending being released. We'll say it's finalized. It's been reviewed, but we have to get back to the auditor and figure out why. We had some questions on his presentation on how he was presenting restricted cash and things like that. So it has not been filed. So we've been waiting for the audit.
So is that likely to change then? I'm sorry, I'm confused about.
No, so now it's 2 years worth. So typically when you're going to look at June at the end of the year, that's going to be your pilot payment for the year. But since you haven't paid your last June's, it's still sitting there. So now you have to.
Oh,
so we owe two.
Additional 20,000 more.
Correct. So every year is about 20,000. An annual payment. It's just you're 6 months behind in actually making that payment.
Okay, one last request. Could you be consistent throughout calling the village and the congregate? Because sometimes it's in there as Stern Center and then sometimes it's in there as congregate. So if you would just do me a favor, because I think we as a group tend to talk about the congregate as the congregate.
Yeah. So use the word congregate from now on. Okay.
Okay, so if you could be consistent throughout, that would probably make it a little easier to try to,
Mm-hmm.
at least for me.
Okay, thank you, Laurel. Any other discussion about the treasurer's report? All right, let's move on. It looks like there's no unfinished business.
Hey.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, the executive director's report.
Hello.
Harriet.
Okay, so thank you. So moving forward, we have less vacancies, or we will have less vacancies in the village since apartments are now being rehabbed and we are showing apartments to those on our wait list. The goal for the congregate is to have 100% occupancy, and new congregants are slated to come in August. In July, we received $113,500 from UI as an energy incentive for the new windows for Stern Village. Regarding COVID-19, our residents are doing great. Everyone is social distancing and wearing masks. COVID-19 testing will be done at Stern Village on August 20th and 27th. We have not had any COVID-19 cases reported. I have submitted approximately $11,000 worth of expenses to FEMA, and I'm waiting for the next steps. There's a lot of different levels in FEMA of review. I know that we've gone through about 4 different levels already, and I know it's being reviewed by some, top level people. So I believe we get 75% back. We received a grant for $5,000 from CHFA to be used for a food essential items pantry. The pantry should be located in the community room and available sometime in August. It will have non-perishable food as well as laundry detergent, toilet paper, paper towels, soap, cleaning supplies, and other essential items that resident needs. In fact, I got one of our vendors who are doing the kitchens for the rehab to donate a food pantry. I also want to thank Stop and Shop Trumbull for allowing us to be part of their community bag program. For the month of July, Stern Village will receive $1 donation from each purchase of the $2.50 reusable bags at Stop and Shop. Again, the one in Trumbull. As of July 22nd, we have $32 in donations. So better hurry and get your bags before it ends on July 31st. As I mentioned, we restarted rehabbing the units in Stern Village. We have 16 units to rehab. Several of those are located in the oldest section of Stern Village and will also be remediated for asbestos. Residents of the oldest units receive letters about the rehab and the remediation. Paulette, Heather, and I have finally moved into our new offices located in the community room. However, the community room is not ready for residents, and due to the pandemic, we are not opening it this summer. Residents have been asked to call for an appointment. We also have a doorbell on both doors, and we have tomorrow we should have a lock box on the door by the ramp for residents to put in their rent checks. Prior to COVID-19, Paulette and I were holding monthly resident meetings. These meetings were extremely informative and provided a platform for residents to discuss any issue as well as offer ideas to improve our Stern Village community. Starting next month, we're going to resume resident meetings outside the community room. In fact, I put a call to Home Depot to see if they can get us a large canopy, hopefully a discounted rate, so that we're able to fit people, 15 people or so, social distancing. Paulette will also hold meetings outside to talk about living communal setting, bullying, when to call the police, and other issues that are timely. Heather's also working on a newsletter for July, August. We have weekly ice cream trucks, thanks to Maureen Contact, and Maureen is looking into having food trucks come to Stern Village. We are going to schedule Tony Castle to provide music outside the congregate for all the residents. Residents are also aware of the entertainment schedule at Town Hall by the gazebo, and they've been placed in the laundry rooms. So we're doing everything we can to cope as we all are. You know, the good thing is that our residents can go outside, they can meet with friends, they can meet with relatives, because as you know, we do have a beautiful campus. And that's all I have right now.
Thank you. I believe that the Trumbull High School marching band has a tent that they rent, and I think it's fairly inexpensive, and they might do it less still for Stern Village, since it's their team that comes and sets it up. As they set it up, they take it down. Might be worth looking into.
Okay, thank you.
The regular charge for that is $250, but I'm sure they're negotiable. And it also is already lit. So if you wanted to do something in the evening, there are lights in the tent.
Nice, thank you.
Okay.
Paul, I have a question for Harriet.
Yeah.
When somebody dies, what are the procedures for getting the keys to his or her unit back from the family?
So normally, depending on the residence, we call the relatives and they come through and they have time, let's say someone passes away July 15th. Well, the hope is that they pay their July 1st month and they have until the end of the month to come and collect the belongings. Give us the key, give us the fob, and that's how it goes. Sometimes, unfortunately, and some of the bad deps, we have residents that pass away and have nobody.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to collect any rent or anything else. We don't usually have that problem. However, we do have in one of the, in the congregate, we do have a unit that that it's not vacant yet. We're hoping that it will be vacant by the end of this month. I know Daisy has called the sons to get the key and to get everything out of there by a certain time. So that's usually the process.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Yes, Laurel.
Harriet, can you go through the vacancies a little bit with us? I see that there are 11 units that are being abated. I also see that there's now one of the units being used for construction storage. So I guess the budget is totally based on these units being fully occupied. Is it realistic that these are all going to be abated within enough time to get these occupied?
So if you look at the project occupancy list, and I've gone over this with Steve James, and he updates it based on the materials that he can get. But for example, for September 1st, we can get 1, 2, 3, 4 people in. For September 15th, we can get, some more people in. So yes, we have appointments scheduled for people on the wait list, and that is when they're coming. So they know that on, let's say, September 1st, they'll be moving into, number 12, let's say. And then we'll just keep going, moving forward.
Okay.
So I have to get everything full.
Once the abatement is done, is there any other work that has to be done to get these things rented?
Well, it's abatement and then it's the rehab. So the ones that have to get abated are the ones in green, which
Right.
is really the units, 1 through 48 or so. So what they're doing is they're abating, they're going to a unit that doesn't need abatement, and they're working on that unit. And then they go back to the abated unit and fix that one. So, Steve has got this pretty down to a science. So he's trying to do, 2 or 4 together. So people are working pretty much all over the village to get these things up and ready.
Okay. So when did we actually get those HTCC monies that are doing this work?
We got them, they're for 2019. So we got them in December of 2019.
Yeah, I think it's the end of December they were
End of
deposited.
December is when we got the check. Yep.
Okay.
If you remember, a lot of you were at the presentation for that from Eversource. And then hopefully, I'm hoping in August, we'll know about the next round because Eversource did commit to us for another round. And this, unfortunately, this will be our last round because they're only allowed to go for 3.
Okay, so you're pretty confident then that these units are going to be going up according to this projected occupancy line?
Correct. Now, again, the numbers might change a little bit, but nothing is going to be over October 15th. That's why, we don't know what the next round of COVID, according to predictions, will bring. That's why, Steve knows that we got to get these done the right way and quickly.
Okay, because I guess I was a little confused through COVID that these are, some of these have been empty for a really, really long time. And it was
Correct.
not possible for them to continue working through the shutdown?
Unfortunately, Bruce would not let any of his people do that. Because again, you usually have 2 or 3 or 4 people, in a room together. So it was very hard and he was afraid for his people. Now, everyone is wearing masks, especially if you're doing any of the abatement, you're in a full suit. So, I was pushing as hard as I can, but.
Just to add, Jason speaking, and I've spoken to Bruce on this and even coming across it in other jobs. I think he's paying for it now. He was being overly cautious and shutting down, basically. I don't think he had to shut down, but he took the position of he wanted to protect both the residents and his crew. So he shut down, laid people off, and they went and they got other jobs because they said, I'm not waiting.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in hindsight, it would have been nice if, we could have pushed him to work, but I don't know how you can, realistically do that without, I guess, sort of financial, right, motivation.
Well, I just would very much like you to stay on top of him, Harriet, with this. I mean, we made it really clear last month during our budget conversations how important it is for us not to have another $80,000 loss because of vacancies.
Totally agree with you, and I am on top of it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on the executive director's report? All right, let's move on then. Laurel, can you discuss the congregate committee findings, please?
Sure. So what was in your packet is actually, I just took out some of the pieces of the original draft that was in one of our congregate committee packets. So let me start with the document retention. Harriet, I guess this is a charge for you, that we really should have a place with all of the important corporate documents electronically in one place.
Oh,
And
yes.
I don't know if you've been able to locate the original contract, but that's something that we had been quite anxious
Yeah.
to obtain.
I did locate, I emailed it to everybody. Did you not get it?
I don't remember seeing it. Did anybody else get it?
Yes. This is Maureen. I got it.
Paul?
I'm looking, I don't remember seeing it.
All right, I'll just resend it because I found it. Chris, Cody, I sent it to you. Did you get it?
I'm sorry,
Sorry, I sent you the original agreement for the congregate.
From the
Yes.
state.
yeah, I
All
believe
right,
I did.
not a problem. I'll resend it again.
Okay,
So
great.
yes, now that we're back in our office, I found all the documents and I will definitely have them scanned in.
Beautiful.
You know
Okay.
what?
And then
Excuse me,
we'll all
this is
have it.
Maureen. Excuse me, Harriet, this is Maureen. Because some of that document was so long and going like a page and they were skipping pages. If you have a hard copy, why don't you print it out and just send it to them so they have it in their hand?
We'll try to do that. Unfortunately, the way it's done, it's over 8.5 by 14. However, I can certainly bring it to Staples and have it done.
I mean, I'm fine getting it
Yeah,
I
electronically.
think you should have it on file so you can go to read it if you have to while you're having a meeting or something else, rather than try to go while you're on a Zoom meeting, go to your computer to find out when it was sent. Let
Right,
them have it in front of them.
It was July 21st, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, Heather did the best she can by trying to do, divide that large document into 2 pages. That's why it's the way it is. But
Yeah, it's called the Assistant Agreement between the State of Connecticut and the Housing Authority of the Town of Trumbull.
Oh, yeah, I found it. It's,
Yeah,
I have it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it came on,
yeah, it said the document says THA and town agreement.
Yeah,
it's-
well, whatever we call it, yeah.
A state agreement.
Got it.
yeah, it's dated July 21st.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that seems like we've all got it.
Okay.
I actually don't have that, Jason speaking, but I don't care as much, but I'll take it, I guess. If you want to just forward it to me so I have it, I'll take it.
Sure.
I don't know if I was
Yeah, well,
on-
there's a lot to read, like safeguarding funds and so on,
I'm sure it says the same as the other ones I've seen, but
Yeah, it does. Just different signatures.
Okay, so the next discussion item that came out of the committee were the long-term debt and reserves discussions. During our conversation, I believe we all pretty much agreed that non-payment of the congregate payroll and other expense to the village must be approved by the commissioners. I'm not 100% sure. In theory, that's wonderful. In practice, I'm not sure how that's going to work, and that kind of troubles me because in June alone, $17,000 additional dollars, which would have fallen under this, was paid. And I mean, I guess I throw that back out at you guys as commissioners. Do we simply want to know when that's happening and it's putting us in the red in real time?
Well, it seems like, especially for this latest $17,000, there's no option to not pay it. And even in this case, it doesn't seem like there was the option to delay the payment of it.
No, but I think in real time going forward, I'd kind of like to know when certainly a payment of that size is being made that pushes us into an increased debt.
Okay, I mean, it should be, the instances should be few and far between. So I would suggest then that, yes, in real time, when it's about to happen, that the board be advised.
Paul, this is Maureen. When we approved Bob's thing, his retirement package, and then we had the extra week in June, wasn't that the reason for the $17,000?
It was, but there was no,
Yeah.
there was no red flag that this was going to.
There was no
increase the debt.
formal thing to tell us that it was gonna put the congregate 17,000. Okay, all right, now I
Right.
get it. All right.
I mean,
I
realistically.
mean, we know why it was there, but we had already approved his payout, so.
Right.
All right.
Probably
Okay,
what should have been, probably what should have been part of the discussion was where the funds were going to come from.
Right, and how much the congregate was going to be responsible for. Okay, all right, I
Right.
got it.
So we'll
All
be
right,
mindful
so
of that
that
in
has to
the,
be discussed.
we'll be mindful of that in the future.
Yep.
Because I think any of us would have realized that part of this was going to fall on the congregate.
That
and
it was going to fall 17,000 on the congregate, yeah.
Not going to have
Okay.
to, so I guess
Sure.
as part of any discussion, we need to know that how it's going to affect the congregate and the debt to the village.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jason speaking, I figure I'll weigh in here. It seems like a good spot for me to weigh in. Just to disclose that Bob's payout wasn't 17,000 was not congregate's portion. That's a big piece of the 17,000 is Bob, but the operating results itself contributed to it. Having that big payroll on the 30th. So it's basically, it's their normal payroll, a fifth payroll for that month, plus Bob on that is just a larger payroll. So it, increased it. But
Okay.
be that as it may, I think in my mind as an accountant, what hopefully would be helpful is that you as a board are made aware of exactly what is charged to that,
To the Congress.
that will say, during that month, and then any payments against it. Because what you don't see, because you're only seeing the net effect. And in this case, the net effect is bad because the county didn't pay for any of it. It just got a benefit and it kept the cash. Because the problem with saying that we can't allow it to increase realistically is the Congress doesn't cut a check for payroll every time payroll is cut. It can advance it if it ever gets that far, and you want to advance funds, and we can try to get towards advancing. But I think if we can, that's why I had said, and even in the narrative said the 322 was if we looked back 2 months ago, it was 322, and then it went down to 305, and then it went back up to 322. So the 322 itself has been around where it's been for the last 4 or 5 months. It's just it ebbs and flows with the cash position. It's like not cutting your check at the end of the month. You just have more cash in your bank account. You just owe the people you owe.
You just didn't pay your
'cause you
bills.
didn't pay them yet. So I think hopefully, and I get the concern of the board. So my point of bringing this up is I want to try to give you whatever information I can without overloading you with information so that you can understand this is what was charged. Because ultimately, when I tell you, I don't know, payroll went up by $3,000 for this month because of the 5th payroll, Village paid for that because it came out of Village's bank account. They may have gotten paid back on July 1st, or they may not have, depending on, swings. But I think if I can so my point is I understand the concern. I will try the best I can to provide information that you guys can absorb without overcomplicating it like my current rant just did. I don't know if that cleared any of it.
It's Harriet. I think that they need a heads up. In other words, just one simple email that says, hey, just remember that this month, expect this to happen before they actually see the end of the month. That's what I think that makes sense for everybody.
You're cutting checks that are going to put us way the heck over. That day, you let us know.
Exactly.
I mean, we're not silly. We know things have to be paid.
Yeah.
But I think it's also obvious, concerning to us when there's that kind of a swing. So morphing right into the next point, because you were discussing repayments. So we have a tension here between repaying the debt owed to the village versus increasing the reserves. So there's a finite amount of cash, and that's the next point, that we need some kind of policy, some kind of way of increasing the reserves for the congregate. And I think we as a commission, at some point, I'm not asking it to be done today, but at some point, we as a commission need to determine what is our priority. Is it repaying the village? Is it increasing the reserves? The state wants us to have $1,000 per unit in the reserve account. Well, clearly we're not even remotely close to there. And it seems like every time we repay something to the village, which you guys did 1 month, the swing comes right back and hits us. So, that's sort of not working. This cash flow of, this is not so lovely. But at some point, I think we need to have something in place that says at the end of each month, if we have an extra $5,000, where does it go? Do we repay the village? Do we put it in reserves? And so if we as a board are going to say 322 is our golden number, okay? We just know we're never going to be able to pay it down. All right, well, it happens. But at least if we have some progress towards increasing the reserves or lowering the debt, life is grand. But I think we need to set a policy that extra 5,000 is or is not repaying the village, and it is or is not going into reserves. So that would be my suggestion for a discussion for another time, and I'm not sure, how we make that decision, but
I
Well, I
would
think-
add in Jason speaking.
I agree with you, and I think there should be some discussion about it among the commission and Jason and Harriet as to what's the best for the congregate and or village.
Jason speaking again, just to, part of that conversation hopefully will be preempted by understanding that the assistance agreements that you have. You now have congregate. I'm not sure if you ever got the new one for the village project, the one that's been signed for the construction project that's closing. I don't know if we ever, I'm looking at Harriet, but I don't know if that was ever distributed or not.
I don't think so. I got it.
No, I never got it.
Okay, I vaguely mentioned maybe sending that along because they're similarly worded, except now on the village one, for what it's worth, you're going to have a surplus cash calculation. That we need to understand as a board. And so my point is those are the key documents to look at in order to evaluate what the policy should be, in my opinion.
You say
Right, thank
surplus
you.
cash, where?
There's,
As a reserve?
well, to give you the rundown, part of the stipulation of the grant, the $5 million grant that you had to do all this work, is that any cash above and beyond what they consider necessary as a reserve goes to DOH as a surplus cash payment, basically showing it's like a payback on the grant. It was a condition of the loan, and they've been doing this on all these deals now. In their mind, they get to now recycle that money into the next project.
Yeah.
I get it in theory.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a baseline set where this has to be evaluated going forwards, and it makes it that much more, I guess, onerous, as far as what your cash position is and what you decide as an organization and how you manage that, because obviously nobody wants to pay the state.
So you have to make the cash balance like low.
Well, in essence, yes.
You want to spend the money, in other words. You don't want to give it back to them.
Correct.
Right, yeah, absolutely. That's the goal.
That's the
my
goal,
point
is
in
to spend
saying
it
that
all
is
and not give it back to them, yeah.
even
Well,
if you
I like that idea.
$1,000 just all of a sudden come up and congregate, I would probably advise you not to pay the village, at least right away, because it's going to be subject to their surplus cash calculation. It could be. I haven't,
Okay, but Jason, it's my understanding that if the congregate were to get a grant and were to pay the money to pay down the debt to the village, that would not be surplus cash. That would just be an expenditure.
Well, it would be cash on village's side. All of a
Yeah,
sudden-
but not on the congregate side. So that would have to be balanced out.
Well, yeah, I guess my point is, so now once village gets that $300,000 in cash, unless they can
Use it.
say to convince DOH that money is part of a reserve that's restricted for something, for improvements or part of its reserve, then that's going to be subject to their clawback, or could be subject. I mean, that's kind of more of a legal determination, but because you could argue it existed before this grant. I think that's
I'm
my
not
point
throwing
is,
over.
it's worth having someone, I'm eyeing Chris over there, look at the agreement to see what his interpretation of that is. I think it's an important point. I wouldn't want to go through this whole conversation and not bring that up, I guess.
And we wouldn't be able to use portion of that money to fund the reserve for the congregate?
Gift it, well, then you mean like get paid back and then give it back to them? Because that'd be kind of bizarre. In essence, you
Yeah,
just-
because if they owe us 300 and we're going to give it back to them, what's the sense?
Right. Yeah, there's no good answer for that one, but it's I guess worth evaluating, right? As you move forwards. How are they going to evaluate you? I know how CHFA typically does that. They act on DOH's behalf.
Right.
A lot of time it's for their interests. So hopefully it's something that's manageable. We'll put it that way.
Well,
Because,
it seems the least risk is to just spend it.
yeah, and certainly
spend-
just paying it back just to pay back. I don't know what that does for you, other than make you feel good.
Yeah. Yeah.
What hopefully does for you is that you're realizing that that programs can't operate with this unmanageable debt if it
Right.
continues to grow, et cetera.
Mhm.
Yeah, for me, it's not what we owe today. It's the trend.
Right.
Completely agree.
And, for it to have gone up so much over the course of a year with really no end in sight is more to me of eating into the village's financial stability.
Right.
And that I wouldn't like to see.
Eating into ours. Yeah.
Paul, would it be reasonable, appropriate, needed if we set up a meeting to discuss with Jason and give him some time to prepare some information on the cash and what it means and how much, is it hurting us to have 500,000 to get other grants? Is it a reasonable amount for us to have for contingencies? I think the cash is so important to us. It might be worth an hour outside of a regular commission meeting just to explore the cash.
Yeah. I would agree with you with that, Laurel. This is Maureen.
I mean, sometime later, I don't know, when it's not super busy, October, November, I don't know. You'd be past taxes then, I hope, and.
Me too.
I mean, it's Harriet. We're very lucky because a lot of people in our position don't have that type of money. So, we've been able to fund a lot of things where a lot of public housing authorities can't. So, we've done quite well.
I guess you can't take it both ways. You're either self-sufficient and don't need the grants, or you need the grants.
Or we need the grant.
What's better?
You always go after money. I mean, that's just the way it is.
We obviously need the money.
Yes.
But it would be worth having a meeting to discuss this
Yeah, that my
with
pause
Jason.
on
Yeah,
that
yeah.
again is unfortunately in my mind, and I'm not balking from a meeting. I'm in for a meeting. Is PHFA's operations change year to year? So how they determine and evaluate who gets what is not consistent on an annual basis. It's part of their.
You're talking about the state, Jason?
Correct. I mentioned
Yeah.
CHFA because they're the one that administer all the money for the housing programs for the most part. And every time they put out an allocation plan as far as where their funds go, their metrics change on an annual basis.
Oh.
Sometimes even more than that. But that's all information we can discuss. I don't know if I'll have concrete numbers that you can say X dollars is where you want to be. My only caveat to that.
Oh, thank you for that caveat.
Okay, well, one way or the other, we need to have a discussion about what we do about the debt, what we do about the reserve. And, whether it's in a commission meeting or not, I mean, I think that obviously is a discussion that we have to have.
Okay.
I'll leave it to you guys. Okay, financial reporting. Jason, I think you have changed up quite a bit of that report. And as I say, the one change I would really appreciate you making is the actual dollar amount of the change on the debt.
Okay.
But I think you've actually changed pretty much most of the rest of that we had been discussing. So one of the things we had discussed was developing a policy for the annual rent and services increases. So, I think we had that was an important thing to do.
I have a suggestion, Harriet. And my suggestion is that each December, we pretty much take a look and decide whether we need to increase the rent and services or maintain it. And the reason I say that is because, and I will send you this, CHFA and GOH provide a whole bunch of guidelines on how to do that. So example, if we take our budget is July 1st is our new budget year, then prior to 120 days, there are certain things you have to do, including sending rent increase meeting notices to residents, gathering a lot of data for CHFA, which is pretty much a letter explaining that we want to do a rent increase and why, and different types of analysis backup, resident meetings, minutes to them, comments. Then of course, the board has to approve, like we have done, whether we're going to do that or not. So in my mind, since we usually start that process in, let's say, January or February, perhaps that's something that we can look at in December. Jason, what do you think? What are your feelings about that?
Typically, it's at the 6-month mark. That's what most boards decide, and they evaluate next year's or the revenue projections for next year. I would suggest you do it in January because you want to use through December's numbers. That's just typically what I see. Could you do it with one less month? Sure. Just usually December is a quick 6 months is an easy one to kind of extrapolate. So I would suggest January being every January. Although it's January, is it December your election of officers? So January will put them right into it. Welcome aboard.
So the other point on there was we were talking about exploring changes to seeking residents with a certain income level, and I think that kind of got nixed. So unless I'm wrong and somebody else wants to raise it, but I think that one was not going to be a taker. The next one is vacancies, and in the congregate we had left the number of days. We wanted the vacancies filled within X number of days and vacancy rate no higher than 3%. So I think we're at the 3% or lower level right now, but I think we need to decide, is it 30 days we want things filled within, and is that reasonable to get keys back and get it painted? And
I would say 30 days after the apartment has been sanitized or rehabbed. So in other words, there was one apartment now that we're, as Jean, mentioned the process, that apartment is going to need a good 10 to 2 weeks worth of sanitizing because of the condition it is in. So, but in the meantime, if we say, let's say June 1st, we know that someone is leaving or they're out. Then we know that we can have them come in July 1st, and we have that in between time to make sure that the apartment is sanitized and is good to go.
Question,
Pardon?
Assuming that it doesn't take more than somewhere between 2 to 3 weeks to get the apartment cleaned out and sanitized, would 60 days from the real vacancy to the re-renting be a reasonable period?
I like to cut it down to 30 to 60 because a lot of times someone wants it, but don't forget, they have to break the lease, so they have to let their landlord know and give them 30 days notice.
Okay.
So, unless someone really needs to come in, let's say they're coming in from a nursing home, and we do have someone like that, and they have no place to go, they can get in, maybe within 2 weeks time, if not sooner, once everything is ready. But usually we let the residents have to tell whoever they're renting from and get, think about moving. You have to get a moving van. You have to get people to help you. You have to decide what you're taking, what you're not taking. So it takes a good 30 days, for someone to do that.
okay, so
it wouldn't be unreasonable. This is Maureen. So it wouldn't be unreasonable for us to say between 30 and 60 days.
Correct.
30 to 45 days or something like that.
Yeah, well, I'm pushing on the 30. If someone needs a little more time, fine. I mean, we have vacancies, we have people that want it, and, you know, if they can't make a decision within a few days or a week, whether they want it or not, we go to the next person. So, you know, every situation is a little different. That's why.
Can
Jason,
we
just
agree
to
on
add-
45 days?
I think 45 is a good number. No more than 45. That gives them 2 weeks to clean and sanitize, especially the apartment we're talking about now. Jeff has said it's going to take a good 2 weeks or so, if not more. Then in the meanwhile, you have the person that's coming in. That would give them enough time to give their landlord a notice to leave. I mean, is that reasonable?
Okay, I'm fine with 45 days,
I'm
Yeah,
okay.
I'm good with 45.
assuming
Yeah.
anyone would move in the middle of a month.
I mean, if we can get it done beforehand, fine. But I mean, you know, 45 seems like a good number.
Okay, so is it safe to say we're all in agreement then about 45 days and no higher than a 3% vacancy rate?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
go along with that. Yeah.
I'm with that.
Suzanne, yes.
Okay, and then one of the other things we wanted was management will provide monthly vacancy reports to commissioners, also needed for village, including unit number and date vacancy occurred. So
Right,
just
and
a reminder, Harriet, in order for us to discuss it, it should be in the packet that goes to Patty Z for the website.
Not a
Okay,
problem.
okay, great.
Okay.
So operating expenses, I think we had discovered some issues we were a little concerned about, and we had mentioned improving the monthly control and oversight of expenses, to formalize who is responsible for review and approval of expenses.
Well, if I may, Laura, we have that process, which I sent the board in June, and I can certainly resend it to you. For example, Daisy, as congregate manager, reviews the invoices for the congregate, handles any discrepancies, alerts me, and she also signs off an okay that we can pay a bill for the congregate. Heather, who's now assistant property manager, does the same thing. She'll review invoices from, let's say, UI, any types of office supplies. If there's any discrepancy, she alerts the suppliers, she advises myself, and she signs off. Jeff, maintenance manager, and Heather, they review all other supply orders and invoices that have to do with maintenance. The supply orders and invoices do not match, Heather immediately contacts the company and they sign off. I mean, I see everything before, you know, Jason gets it anyway. Bruce, who's construction manager, and or Steve James, project manager, they review all invoices for the congregate projects and they advise me of the payment schedule, and I sign off, they sign off. So I review all the invoices with Jason. I sign off on everything prior to cutting the check. And then Maureen, who's commissioner and treasurer, also reviews all the invoices and signs off prior to check signing. So we do have a process in place where everyone is responsible for taking a look at, you know, the invoices and making sure that, you know, they are acceptable.
Do you have something in place, Harriet, where people actually have to initial or sign or physically approve the document?
Yes, they have to
Yeah.
sign off on it. Yes, they have to initial
Harriet
it.
signs,
They
I
have to put
sign.
okay. Yeah, and we have
There's
multiple
a signature
signatures.
on every bill
Yeah, and multiple signatures.
and multiple signatures. And if I have a question when it finally does come to me, that's why I like to sign them when Jason and or Michelle are there and Harriet is there. I will question the both of them as to why, you know, this amount why is it higher than it was last month, and what is the reason? And then they explain, and it's usually in the invoice. But if the invoices are not, when I read an invoice before I get to the check, I want to know what the service was and did they complete it. Or is this on a payment schedule or something like that? I question, you know, a few of them. I have to say most of them are all in order. But Jason can vouch that I question him, and I question Michelle. but no, and then when it's finalized, everybody signs off and I'll sign the check. And if I don't find the explanation right, I just pull the check out and wait for them to review it again.
So in real time, are you guys able to see that it's putting us over budget, or is that simply an after the payment is made, it hits the books and we get the reports that show we're $500 over budget or whatever?
It's not really in real
Real
time.
time.
Some things
No.
you can, but no, not typically not. Trying to think of a way. No, I mean, I
Is
know.
there a way to do that, Jason?
No, when I entered, I'm looking at the prior, like there's in the system, it allows you to see the prior month's amount. Because I'll check sometimes to see if there was an amount for the prior month, especially if there's a balance, and I'm checking to see if that actually was paid, et cetera, that kind of thing.
Jason, are there areas that you've seen for us where we have gone over budget? What areas in specific? I'm assuming office supplies is never an issue.
Well,
Are there
actually,
areas that there are an issue that we should keep an eye on?
yeah, well, that was a newer issue that was determined this year, when the office supplies were getting higher than not only was historical, but that we had budgeted. So that was actually a good example of what, we went back to Heather and said, let's go through what you've been ordering and why. It's actually determined a lot of it was because of the move between offices, but that's beside the point. Unfortunately, other than seeing what was paid to the vendor, it's not as clear or easy to, you could always print something, but it's not as handy for Maureen, for instance, unless I were to give her a report with it. Or if we are to delay payments. The problem in the past, and again, I don't want too much off course, I tend to do this too much, so to tell me to quiet down, is we pay bills right away. You guys always have done that. You get the bill and you pay it. You're never late, which is a good thing. I guess your vendors probably love that. But there's less of an onerous on, hey, we have 15 days to pay this. Let's see if we should pay something else. The only time we are managing cash that way is in congregate, when we know we haven't gotten the security bill yet. So we might, make sure we got to get that before, determine how much cash we have available. So we do discuss the cash balances in that sense, but on the village side, it's never been an issue. There's just been, I'm not saying it's good or a bad way, but.
Can I make a suggestion, Jason, that perhaps as you're bringing the checks to Maureen, you could bring a profit and loss, on which you can say to her, oh, wow, in this particular line, it's November, and you're already $50 from being over budget. So I think it would be fairly easy for you to have a report that you could just highlight and say, oh boy, this is going to go over budget with one more invoice. This is going to go over budget with one more invoice.
Right.
So that Maureen could then go to Harriet, who could then go to her staff and say, hey folks, you are, 7 months away from the end of the fiscal year and you're already going to be over budget. So it would just be, yes, it would be sort of an alert almost after the fact, but close enough that the staff is advised that they're within, a hair's breadth of being over budget on something.
Right. That's going to be part of.
I understand that, but you could advise them in real time to be aware that they're going to be over budget.
Correct. Part of it will be using more of the reports from the software. I think in the past, those reports haven't given the past board what they wanted. I think in this case, timeliness of information is better than format.
Yeah.
I think in the past, people have said, well, I don't like the way this variant says it, so can you do it this way? And that's why the report is as it is. The report you see from us is not from the software. It takes time to do, I would love, you should just print it from the software. And yes, if there's anything that needs to be done the month end and for the board to see, that's different. But those could be clicked with a button. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Every pay run, you click the button and you print that report. Agreed.
So Terry, I think we should start doing that. I mean, we have the software.
Right.
And why don't we just use it to make it your
Right.
life easier too?
I think before well, I don't want to put any onus on us, but before we were involved, a lot of the stuff was done not real time. Like for instance, booking payroll. Some of the stuff just, when you book the payroll, it doesn't get recorded exactly when the pay run is run because you don't know you got to allocate it. And it's the normal checks are no problem. Those get posted, those go. It's establishing a process that's going to put things like payroll, which again, you can't change anyways. Payroll's payroll. So maybe those ones you just ignore for the time being. I would have to think about it. I don't want to guarantee something that just causes more headaches for those that are
I
trying
just don't
to.
think this is brain surgery. I think you probably have some tools that if you communicate with Maureen in real time when she's signing checks, you know immediately that you're nearing the brink on something.
Yeah.
Boom. Just communicate it to Maureen, who communicates it to Harriet, who communicates it to staff.
Right. So if we see that office supplies is going to be off, or food deliveries or whatever it might be, a red flag or a heads up at that point.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
cool. Contracted services is the next one. That invoices for contracted services need to be more closely monitored. And if not in compliance with the contract, not paid. So I think our discussion that we just had answers some of the questions about who's responsible and maybe a better process for seeing in real time that we're beginning to, veer off a little. So the next question was.
I'm sorry, hold on one sec.
Oh,
Have we
sure.
had issues in the past with vendors billing us outside agreed contracted fees?
I believe our discussion had been about the food, that the
No, for the
invoices
congregate,
we're
yeah.
receiving are not what we were expecting.
Correct.
Okay.
And they were changing the process as to when they billed, et cetera. Not necessarily what they billed for, just, the format of what they were billing and what information they were presenting us to put in our software. So yes.
I think we were having a challenge figuring out
Yes.
what was going on, and it was such a large amount of money that we were kind of that. I think if I remember correctly, that was the basis of our concern on that one.
Correct.
So, yeah, but I'm hoping that if this system goes into place, that maybe, in real time, we'll figure it out. Okay, so the contract review was the next discussion we had. And how frequently are we going out to bid? What should be the maximum term of contracts? Who should be monitoring that service levels of these contracts is being achieved? And that commissioners should be advised monthly of any complaints or issues with service providers. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't that one to do with security? I think that was our discussion on that point, was the security.
Yeah, they've been on an annual, right? Harriet? I think we've had
Right.
them the longest.
So, if you may, there's informal, in my mind, and we do have a whole procurement process. There's some formal bids and formal bids. So, for example, when I looked to see security to find another company, I called a whole bunch of, as you remember, a lot of different places, and they sent me information, their proposals. Based on all that, we still realize that our current security person is still much lower. When we do look into the food service, we will do an RFP, which is a little different. That'll be a real formal bid. I think, in my mind, I think the term should be anywhere from maybe 3 to 5 years, as long as we can get out of it without any penalty. So in terms of also monitoring that service level is achieved, I think that's myself. I think also that's myself and Daisy for the congregate. And yes, any complaints, you'll certainly know, and it'll also be, you know, how it's been handled.
Oh, I think to protect all of us, and I don't mean all of us, but to protect the congregate and the village with these service contracts, I think you ought to make sure that every one of your, the times that you are not happy with their service performance, that it should actually be in writing. Not just a phone call, but that there is a way to track what was the problem, how was it resolved? Oh, was resolved, wasn't resolved. And I, as a commissioner, would sort of like to know that if we're in a 3 or 4 year contract with somebody for tens of thousands of dollars, and you're really not happy with them, I would like to know why, you know, what the problem is with them, and that you've not been able to resolve it. And then let's split.
So what I would do, I will come up with a form for myself and for Daisy to use based on Laurel's suggestion, and we'll just start documenting based on a form.
Because it seems that typically the service contract for however many years, you have to inform in writing the provider of what service level they're not achieving, and then typically they'll get some number of days to rectify that. Generally, you can't just, in any of these contracts, you can't just get out of it with notice or anything like that.
Right.
They need some type of notice to rectify
Well, for one, I was able to get out of because we were not satisfied with their service. And I did not have a problem with it.
Good. Okay, well,
When we switched
for others, we might need to follow the letter of the contract, and it might require notice in writing and their ability to fix the issue in some number of days.
Give them so much time, yeah.
It's just good process in general. So,
All right, so 3 to 5 years. What are your opinions on that?
I'm okay with a 3 to 5 year as long as we're very, very hardcore about negotiating rates. I mean, a commitment, a company, that's gold to a company, that they have a
Right.
guarantee of income for 5 years is like amazing these days. So the trade-off of that is they should give us exceptionally low rates.
Right.
Because we are keeping them, yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
just so the government, you know, the industry is typically 3 years with 2 one-year extensions, and then no longer than 5 years. That's where the 3 to 5 number probably comes from. But you typically don't give them the 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Right off the bat, you give them 3, and if you like it, you extend it a year at a time or something like that. Yeah.
But you always get, well, anyways.
Okay. One of the other things we had discussed was based on the best practices presented by the Richfield Commissioner, that we thought we might review our maintenance staff and other options for possible cost savings. I don't know where we've left that, but certainly that's a big chunk of the overhead for the congregate. So at some point it might be worth reviewing to see if there is some cost savings, but I don't know that there would be in our circumstance.
Terry, I think we've already saved a lot of money in maintenance based on the end of June. So understand that our maintenance men, now we have 3, they do just about everything. So in terms of outsourcing, are you talking about, Laurel, outsourcing services like
Yes.
things like that? They also have all new updated equipment. And one of the reasons we did that was so that we wouldn't have to outsource services. If remember, since they are also in union, there's certain things that they get priority over too. And obviously any job, they don't want it to go to somebody else. So anything that is outsourced, and there are several things that are where they can't do, like for major sewer clogs and things like that, we have to outsource that because they don't have the equipment to do that. But anything like snow removal or grass cutting, for instance, that is something that, our guys are certainly capable of.
So I guess one question I would ask you then is we're down one full staff person on maintenance. And apparently that is not going to affect, I hope, and I assume you would not have suggested it was going to impact the quality of the service, the maintenance being performed. That being said, are there additional cuts then that can be made if we are already down one full staff person and not going to be impacted? Are there any additional savings we can do, cutting hours anywhere? I mean, can you take a look at that and just see if there are additional savings somehow that can be had? As much as anything else, anything with the congregate, I mean, any cost savings we can get from any chargebacks, who knows? And last but not least, under property, we suggested that the capital needs assessment plan should be reviewed annually by the executive director and the commissioners in order to better gauge possible major expenses and prepare for the financial impact. So I don't know how often we're reviewing it now, but as a body, I guess we had wanted to make sure annually we do review it.
Right, so if you recall, we also discussed that we are doing a lot of different upgrades to the congregate. And once that has been completed, then I suggest we take a look and redo the capital needs assessment, or take a look at it and cross off the things that have been done and things that we might need. In terms of the village, it's the same thing. Once all the rehab's been done, we can take a look and see, where we go from that. I think a capital needs assessment should be updated every 5 years.
Well, Harriet, when would you suggest that we review the current CNA for the congregate to cross off the things that are done?
I think we need to do that, once the upgrades are made. So
Right.
Hopefully starting the end of December, we will be able to start working on the new boiler system and air intake and, a lot of the upgrades that we're making that were already in the old CNA for the congregate.
So can I suggest though that every January, and why not January, it's the beginning of a new year, that we just all look at the CNA. And it can be a hand, it's that's done, that's done, that's done, that's in progress, that's in whatever. I think it's really important that we have a grasp of what's on that document, what's still left to do. If Harriet knows that there's something going to blow up in the next 6 months, I think it would be really good for us to know on an annual basis that maybe a car is going to break down or has been breaking down or whatever it is. So we can do some long-term planning with her in terms of what we might be faced with.
Right.
This is Maureen. Laurel, I happen to agree with you wholeheartedly on that. That because you never know what's going to happen, and we have to be prepared in the next budget if something happens. Or you have to know you have to have the money there to pay for it, especially if it's an emergency.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Annually. Like after the rehab is done, then I think we take another look at the village. After all this, the boiler, most especially over there, yes, then we can look at it. But we know they're going to do windows. Was that part of what the men looked at the other day, Harriet? Were they concerned? What about the heater things? The things that we have. Was that part of that?
You mean
the heat pump?
Yes, that's also part of it. But yes.
All right, yeah. So we know after that's done and the boiler's done and the walk-in showers are done, we have to take another look at the congregate and see what needs to be done.
Right, but
and
in
the same thing with the village.
Whether things are completely done or not by January, we can certainly, check it off to say that it's in progress or, needs to be done or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Maybe.
fine.
And maybe in December, our maintenance guys review the CNA before the board reviews it.
Yeah. I was just going to add that. Good point, Paul. and that it's the timing's perfect that way. If you can have maintenance and Jeff especially give you the report in December so that you're ready.
To see what should be done, yep.
It's
idea.
necessary for the January talk on rent increases even. So, because they're kind of interrelated, so I think that
Correct.
timing makes the most sense.
Yeah, that
And
makes a lot of
Update on
sense.
that.
So, it's good time.
Okay, that's great. I'll put on my,
Mm-hmm.
That's great. I think we were looking to have it institutionalized, so if we, know that every January, that's a task that we're gonna have on the agenda,
Mm-hmm.
that would be useful. And I think that may be it, the findings that I had from that committee.
All right, thank you. Is there any other discussion or comments about the report?
No, that was a good one.
All right, thanks very much to the committee for all the hard work that they've put in. Laurel, thank you for that report. So we'll move on to unfinished business, which it looks like we do not have any. And then we have one new business item. Harry, can you please discuss how we're going to deal with tenant-to-tenant disputes?
So Paulette, our RSC, Heather, who's now assistant project property manager, worked closely with the residents to de-escalate any tenant issues. And I am made aware of any issues and step in when needed. Many of our tenant issues are he said, she said, and are resolved quickly. Each resident has a copy of our THA grievance procedures. They're also part of any lease agreement. If a resident files a complaint about another resident and the complaint cannot be resolved amicably, we follow the grievance procedures. As you know, there's the informal grievance procedure whereby Paulette, Heather, Maureen, and/or another commissioner meet with the residents. Sometimes we get, and Chris, I would point this at you right now. Sometimes we get Joe Franco involved. Joe Franco works for Cody and Ganello, and he is an advocate for the THA. So when it comes to the grievance process, sometimes he's asked to go in and mediate the actual process. We also have the Mary Sherlock Counseling Center, and they provide counseling for our residents. So for many years, we've either had Robin Bieber or Victor Olson, now retired, met with the residents, the nurse's office, and the congregate. They also provide several meetings with the resident to discuss timely issues like bullying, like gossiping, like the aging brain, and the like, to try to get more of a community. They also provide ones on in dealing with death, dealing with timely issues that affect all our residents, to try to, again, let's just keep everyone calm. Residents that do go to the Mary Sherlock Counseling Center, they were receiving services via telephone, and now they can meet with the counseling center, I understand. Another social worker reached out to me. She's from the Family and Children Aging Agency for Counseling. She's a social worker, and she's also involved with her residents. I mean, I think a lot of the issues has to do with COVID, because there's so many people, as you know, that are just having difficulty dealing with this, and we do have a social worker, and that's pretty much her expertise. We also have a resource guide for residents and a listing of all local and state services in the newsletter. We're going to talk about that, and residents can certainly pick up a copy of it. So Paulette, the RSC, is great in finding services, and working with the residents to try to make sure that everyone is working together and de-escalate things. Sometimes you can't. That's why we have the whole grievance process in place, so that we follow it to really make sure that everyone understands what's going on and everyone is covered. If someone says something about a resident, you don't call the police, obviously. You don't say, because someone called your name or someone whatever. You just don't do that, and that is something that we have to deal with. Yes.
Can I get you to pause right there? Do you think it might be helpful for the residents to establish a hotline that's internal that they can call, so that they might not call the police first?
Well, most residents don't call the police first, but we do have a couple that seem to feel that's the only way around. And even though we tell them, not appropriate. And again, you know, the police can actually fine people for doing that, I believe. I'm not sure, but, you know, it's just not right. So when you say a hotline, who will they call? They can always call Mary Sherlock Center. I mean.
Well, I was hoping it would be something internal, like if some extension. I don't know how the phone system works. All the lines that go to the
So
residents
Paul,
are
I'm kind of like the hotline because they call me on my cell phone morning, noon, and night. On the weekends, morning, noon, and night. So I'm pretty much their hotline. You know, I don't know what else to do, and I do everything I can to de-escalate it, and I do everything I can to listen, take notes, and I'm emailing, you know, Paulette and Heather to say, okay, just got a call. This is what, you know, we talked about, whatever. But I do think that the grievance policy makes a lot of sense. And I think that, you know, as, I know this is a quote from Joe Franco, you know, put your mouth where your money is or something like that, because it's pretty much if you're gonna say something, you know, great. But now if it's really a complaint, you need to write it down. We have to have things in writing.
Right, so to be clear, when these situations, I mean, we always have to keep in mind that THA is a landlord. It is not a social service agency. And as much as people would like it to be a social service agency, it does not have the resources to do that. It is a landlord. And when tenants get into these disputes, I mean, we're not an enforcer, and that's why we're not encouraging them to call police. But when they call the office, instead of calling a dispatcher at the police department, THA does not have the resources to respond to these situations. And that's why if they escalate, our recommendation is that they call the police, because THA that's not the role that the landlord plays.
Chris, I would respectfully suggest that the grievance procedure be amended so that if they feel that simply a call to Harriet or Daisy or Paulette is not going to get them where they want to go, that we formalize an agreement with, say, the Mary Sherlock Center or something, so that the tenants understand that we expect them to call at least a specified Trumbull outside party to mediate the grievance rather than going to the cops.
Well, the answer is that doesn't work within the boundaries of the rule and the law. So the idea is you have an informal and a formal grievance procedure. So we issue pre-termination notices to tenants for lease enforcement, lease violation. So whether it's a non-payment of rent or whether it's a disturbance of your neighbors at 3 o'clock in the morning and banging pots and pans, threatening people, whatever it is, when they're issued a pre-termination notice, they can then invoke the grievance procedure, and they can have an informal hearing. Basically, it's a notice to cure, okay? And so the landlord is basically saying, look, you've got to get along with your neighbors. You've got to conform your behavior to the requirements of the law and to the lease.
Yes, but Chris, that assumes that the complaint is valid in the first place.
Well, that is the grievance procedure. And so most of these things resolve at the informal.
Yeah, but this is really, in a way, we're putting the cart before the horse. You're almost forcing a legal issue. That is, you're either you informally work it out so that the two complaining tenants manage to figure out what they want to do and they don't come to blows or anything else.
I agree.
But for there to be, you're saying for the formal procedure to be invoked, the housing authority has to, by doing a pre-termination notice, has to look like it's taking sides.
No, because it will issue the pre-termination notice to both sides of the dispute.
That, to my mind, is really escalating things.
Well, again, you're asking the landlord to mediate tenant disputes between people who either don't get along, don't care for each other, have emotional disturbances or whatever, and they don't have the resources to be the social service provider. So what we're doing is we're saying to people, look, you've got to get along with your neighbors and conform your behavior to the requirements of the lease and the law. Otherwise, we have to take action.
But we do have the resources to do pre-termination notices. This isn't right, Chris.
Chris, and not for nothing, while we are technically just landlords, we do quite a few more things for our tenants than any landlord for whom
Trust me, I understand that, but I, as your counsel, am not going to put on you a role that you're not required to. I'm talking about, in the light of day, what can we do? And if you have a tenant that's complaining and you say, okay, well, did you call the office? No. Did you call the police? No. If they tell you that someone is disturbing them, and but they don't want to go on record, they don't want their name, they're afraid of retaliation, et cetera, et cetera. That's the point at which we say, all right, well, if you're not willing to stand up and make the complaint and back it up, then there's really nothing we can do. So I'm not encouraging them to call the police. What I'm saying is either work it out or stand up and make the complaint. And we will then do what we can to enforce the lease and to make the problem resolved.
So the complaints that we're accepting are ones that would put a resident in breach of their lease.
Well, what we're trying to do is also document these things. If we have a pattern of behavior with a particular tenant and no one wants to make an actual complaint to the office, there is no record. And if the behavior rises to the level of a lease enforcement action, there's very little we can do if we have no one to testify as to the behavior and as to the threat, et cetera. So putting your staff in a position of attempting to mediate frequently petty disputes, he said, she said, between people that act like high school kids. And I'm not being demeaning. What I'm saying is you have friction among people who live in close quarters to each other, whether this is a luxury condominium complex or a congregate or a public housing complex. The issues are the same. Pools, pets, parking, whatever. And I'm admitting that there's a limitation as to what the informal and formal grievance procedure can accomplish, but that's the tools that we have. So
well, I think there are other tools. I think we do have resources such as the counseling center that we
I would agree with you, but again, I'm talking about the grievance process. I'm being clear as to what my staff, Joe Franco, is a paralegal in my office who's got 18 years experience in doing landlord-tenant law. So when he goes to an informal proceeding, he is very good at mediating and resolving it because he's like, look, here's the chessboard. You're going to say this, you're going to say that. We're going to move the pieces this way, and here's where it's going to go. And everybody gets real clear that they need to get along, or the situation becomes escalated to the next level. So he's a mediator to the extent that he's working through that grievance process, okay? He's not a paid social service mediator. He's an advocate for the landlord in enforcing the lease, making everybody play nice with their neighbors.
Chris, is it always the case before Joe Franco gets involved that both sides are under a pre-termination notice? I think
not always the case. No, it's not always the case.
I would like there to be an intermediate step between.
Well, that's great, Gene, but that's not the eviction process. So all I'm trying to do.
I don't want an eviction process.
Well, I understand that.
You are dealing. It's all right to say that the housing authority is a landlord. We are also an agency of the town of Trumbull. It seems to me that there ought to be some way of, if the tenant who is aggrieved calls Harriet or Paulette or Daisy and is not happy with the result, that there is something they can do other than forcing the housing authority to file 1 or 2 pre-termination notices to bring in your guy. Why can't we set up a procedure where they call the senior center or the Sherlock Center or whoever?
Go for it. But right now, what you're doing is you're putting your staff in a position of mediating these disputes on a daily basis and then second guessing the actions that they take and the things that they say and the way they try to address this stuff. So your staff is spinning its wheels and getting drawn into internecine tenant disputes every single day.
Well, let's pause right there. I don't think that's what Gina suggested. that our staff get in the middle of these disputes, because then undoubtedly they're going to be seen as taking sides.
Exactly.
And then the staff starts becoming part of the problem. I think all
Right.
Gene's really looking for is some point in the process where we say, refer this to the Mary Sherlock Center.
Yes.
That's fine. And
Before we go to the pre-termination
trust me,
notice stage.
I've done this for 30 years. I hear you loud and clear. I don't want to see anybody's housing subsidy be affected in any way, shape, or form. I'm only trying to communicate the limitations of, you know, our lease enforcement abilities. I mean, we can't make people you can't make people play nice all the time.
Okay,
And sometimes you need to do a little lease enforcement in order to, and as things escalate, it's also required. If somebody's getting out of hand, the other tenants are certainly within their rights to say, I don't understand why you're allowing this to happen when I have to live next door to this problem. And so sometimes this is appropriate. And I agree, many times it's not. But this is where it heads if people can't resolve their differences.
okay, and to a certain extent, that's up to the tenant that has the problem. If they want to file a formal complaint that puts another tenant in breach of their lease, that's up to that tenant that's making the complaint.
It opens the
But-
process. And unfortunately, Paul, what I do see too is the process of sometimes what I see is people get together and decide to vote someone off the island.
Yeah.
They want somebody out and they start to try to paper them and they complain about everything. And of course, that person gets more and more agitated daily because people are ganging up on them.
Right.
And I'm absolutely in support of having counseling avenues available. I see it all the time and my heart goes out.
It's Harriet, and actually Maureen's here because her phone died. So as you
My
see, we're
phone
social
died. I'm not having good luck with anything
So
today.
anyway, understand that Maureen is here, so she sees a lot on an everyday basis. Now, however, if I write a letter to somebody, let's say that I find out that so-and-so is smoking in their apartment, and we know it's a lease violation. So I will put in the letter, as per your lease, blah, 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 please make sure you're not smoking in your apartment. So don't think we immediately go right to the attorneys. We don't. You know, if it comes to a letter, I will write a letter. We will have a conversation about it. Either I will, Paulette will, you know, Heather will, we all will. And then to try to say, okay, this is what's going on. Please stop doing this. But for the most part, we can handle it like that. The issue is when the two people, I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
Oh,
I think what we may be looking for are some guidelines that all of the staff follow as to when an outside agency should be contacted and who that agency should be.
I have a suggestion. Do you think the agencies that we contact, say Sherlock, should talk to both the people that are complaining about one another?
Yes.
I think they would know better than anybody what they should do.
Somebody else has to get in there and we have to not get involved, but there's like a constant thing going on here and it escalates and then it goes down and it escalates. You gave them credit as acting like high school students. I went to them and said to me, they're acting like second graders, like we're a teacher in a schoolyard, learn how to play nice together. Don't say nasty things about this one. Don't say nasty things about that one. It's like you have to explain this to them. They should know this by now. But all it does is escalate after that. So I think all the parties involved should have, or we should call Sherlock and get somebody over here to talk to complainant number 1 and complainant number 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
Either do it as a group or do it individually.
So what we're looking for is a documented policy, for lack of a better word, or procedure. That all the staff knows to follow, who to call, and under what circumstances.
I feel better about it.
I agree. And what I'm saying too is I'm also watching for patterns of behavior. When things are escalating, I mean, if it's a non-threatening disturbance, certainly no one, first of all, the housing authority is not calling the cops. We're not calling the cops on somebody unless the threat was against the housing authority or its staff. These are disputes among the tenants. If the disturbance continue or escalate, THA basically has an obligation to try to, you know, document this stuff. And that's where I'm coming in, okay? Trust me, I would that we could, you know, make everybody happy all the time. You can't. But basically, we also have to watch out for the whole organization and all of the tenants in case something really is escalating, and the housing authority has reason to be aware of that. Anyway, but having said that, even though sometimes pre-termination notices issue, they are, as I say, notices to cure. So whether it's saying, look, you forgot to send me a rent check, please get the rent in within, you know, the next 14 days, otherwise we'll have to take further action. Or typically a pre-termination notice is a 21-day notice to cure. And if it's disturbing of the neighbors or it's threatening or whatever, we don't intend that it's going to go to a notice to quit. We don't intend that it's going to go to an eviction, but the pre-termination notice kicks off the grievance process, which gets all the parties talking, and then may result in an informal, at which things are resolved 9 out of 10 times. And if they don't like what happens at the informal, they're free to go to a formal. And I know we don't want to go there. And it seems like, you know, an overreaction, but I'm saying the informal grievance procedure is intended to resolve it. It's not intended to kick anybody out. And you need to screw up pretty big time, you know, to actually get terminated. So the informal process gets them together in a room with some consequences. And that frequently allows us to negotiate a settlement. That's all. It's not as bad as you might imagine. It's not, oh, we're throwing people out. It's just the informal can do wonders in many circumstances to get people to be reasonable.
Okay.
And then feel heard.
And that's, you know, up to the tenant how they want to create the complaint. But I think it is up to the staff, depending on who's coming to them with just general complaints, as to when they get an outside agency involved. And I think you can ask Harriet. I know that everybody's got kind of an informal process that they have where they're going to call Sherlock or somewhere else. If you could just formalize that and document it, and maybe that's something that we could review at the next board meeting.
So do we also have anything, Paul? And you guys probably know better than I, but when a resident has a problem with our staff, and it could be with anybody, it could be with a maintenance guy, you know.
Yeah, it could be.
Do we have something in place on how to resolve that? Because clearly the staff can't resolve its own issues. So should that go to Mary Sherlock? Should that go to
No, I think we have, we discussed that a number of months ago and came up with it should be in our policy and procedures manual. There is a process that the tenants can follow if there's an issue with the staff. Actually, I think in general, if they have an issue with the staff, they go to Harriet. If they have an issue with Harriet, there's a process they follow where it comes to one of us.
But it goes to Harriet first. I've never found that fully satisfactory. I think if somebody has a problem with the staff, it should go to Harriet first. But if they have a problem with Harriet, right now our policy says it also goes to Harriet. I've never been in favor of that.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right.
It's not right, guys. If the problem is with Harriet, there ought to be a different way of resolving it.
All right, well, why don't we put something on the...
That'll be after I'm gone, but it should be on the next agenda.
Yeah,
it's time we looked at this.
Let's put that on the next agenda. Harriet, if you could distribute that specific policy, I know I've got it somewhere in that printed book, but if you could send that policy out to all of us and make it a business item for the next meeting, that would be great.
Another thing, when they have a problem, with one of the staff or somebody that's trying to help them and listen to them, after a while, when you start to say, you know, let's end this, or, you know, is the complaint legitimate? They think every complaint here is legitimate. To them, it is. Somebody's staring at them, somebody is glaring at them. After a while, you know, you just say to them, well, don't look at them. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. They don't like the answer they get. My thing is, what do you do after that? Are we going to institute a policy where we call Sherlock for all of these people that are involved in some of these disagreements?
I don't think our staff should really get in the middle of these disagreements, because like I said before, then it's going to be the staff looks like they're taking sides,
Right.
and then people are going to say, you know,
And that's what they think.
this one is playing favorites with that one, and then the staff gets pulled into the entire thing. It should really go, and if it's for every single time, then it's every single time. It gets referred to Sherlock or whoever, or if we need to bring in somebody from Chris's organization, or if the police need to be called. But our staff should not try to mediate these things. It's only going to be bad for the staff. So Harry, you'll draft that and make it an agenda item for next time.
Correct.
This is
Okay,
going
do
on
we have
the
any
next
other discussion on that topic? All right, with that, I guess we will open it up to resident comments if there are any residents hanging in the wings. Bill, do you see anybody that's dialed in?
There is
There's
one
one
attendee on the phone. If that resident wants to speak, press *9 on their phone to raise their hand.
Oh, Bill's on. I want to ask him, why was I disconnected?
No, I
Couldn't get
guess
on.
not. All right, thanks, Bill.
It went blank.
All right, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Paul, one sec. I should have
Yes.
asked this when Harriet gave her report. Harriet, do you have any update on the fire alarm system grant?
Not yet.
Okay.
Hopefully, I guess August or so. I think they're behind on a lot of this because of COVID.
Okay.
And we're not having a meeting in August, right?
Oh, that's right. We don't have a meeting in August. Our next meeting is September. Actually, I have a meeting in August.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Best of luck, Jane.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Good luck,
Thanks,
Jane.
folks.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Sure you are.